This is an IELTS Task 1, where we compare two bar charts. The title is Household Spending in Egypt and Brazil. For the first step, I'd like you to study each bar chart and decide what information should be compared. We are comparing Egypt and Brazil, monthly spending by category. There's 10 categories, here and here, on the x-axis. The monthly spending is given as a percentage of a total, here and here, on the y-axis. For this type of chart, it would be helpful to tip it on its side in order that we can clearly see what categories have the most spending. We can clearly see that in Egypt, food and housing represent the greatest percentage. Similarly, in Brazil, food, housing, and a category called Other represent the highest percentage. I'm going to group the bar graphs into essential and non-essential categories. Essential means necessary for life. As we can see, housing and food are essential for life, as is healthcare, education, and we'll include savings as well. When you look at two bar graphs, it's useful to categorize or group certain things together in order to decide how you will structure your essay. In this case, for the two countries, Egypt and Brazil, I've categorized essential categories as housing, food, healthcare, education, and savings. Now I'm going to group together non-essential items or categories. Non-essential categories are things that are not necessary for life. These would include entertainment, automobiles, something called HPC, mobile phones. The big difference between these two graphs is that other spending accounts for 20% or less than 20% for Egyptians. However, other spending for Brazilians accounts for over 20%. Now that I've grouped my information according to essential and non-essential items, I'm going to look at the similarities and decide how I'll write about my bar charts. In my introduction, I'll introduce the bar charts. What do they illustrate? In my main body, I want to focus on similarities and differences. I want to compare and contrast the two bar charts. I don't want to talk about each bar on its own. Similarities between Brazil and Egypt is that a higher percentage of money is spent on food and housing for both Egyptians and Brazilians. Another similarity is that the lower percentage of money is spent on non-essential items like mobile phones. There's a big difference, which is that Brazilians spend a higher percentage of money on other things, and Egyptians spend more money than Brazilians on education. I'm going to focus on comparing and contrasting the two bar charts rather than talking about each bar individually. In my conclusion, I'm going to identify an overall trend and summarize my main points in 2 sentences. Step 3, I should identify an overall trend. In this case, I identified it as such. Overall, essential items such as food and housing account for the highest level of spending by Egyptians. In contrast, food and others account for the highest level of spending by Brazilians. When I go to write about my two bar charts, I want to make sure that I use correct grammar and sentence structure. There's a couple ways I can write about percentages. The first way is to write about a noun followed by a verb followed by a percentage. For example, I could say Egyptians used around 41% of their monthly spending on food. Another way to say the same thing is to put the percentage first. So then I could say 41% of monthly spending by Egyptians was on food. In both cases, I'm using the past tense. I want to use language to compare and contrast information. I want to say what things are different and also give similarities. For example, I can say, while Brazilians saved 10% of their money each month, Egyptians only saved 7% of their money each month. While and only show contrast. Now, I'd like you to complete the essay of the 2 bar charts comparing monthly spending in Brazil and Egypt. Organize your work into 3 paragraphs, write 150 words, and use this essay map to help guide your answer.